So I don't agree with what I'm about to say, but I'll say it anyways. They say the mind has something to do with the brain. Now, I don't actually agree with that, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it's accurate. If there's any connection between the brain and the mind, it's the same connection as a radio to the song. And nobody would dissect a radio looking for the song in there. The brain is a transistor or a receiver of the thoughts and that which we call the mind. Now, here's where it gets interesting, according to the way I said earlier. Do you know what the organ in the body that the highest percentage of water is?
It's the brain, officially.
Officially, you're right, 80% instead of 70%. That's because a brain is it's like a quartz crystal, except a quartz crystal can't grow and evolve. You can just add more and more data to it, and it will know more and more things, but it can't change itself. A water crystal it's the same number of infinite binding sites for anything from food to thoughts, right? That's the mind.
Yeah.
And every time you put a thought in there, if it's a thought that's towards wholeness, it creates a more coherent crystal. And anytime you put a thought in there of hatred or this, my friend Andy, you talked about this. He did an experiment where he put rice in water, and every day he said to one identical rice, "You're stupid." And the other one, he said, "Thank you for nourishing me." At the end of 30 days, the rice with the "you're stupid" was black fungal mess, and the "thank you for nourishing me" was fermented rice strip. So, in other words, the consciousness of us determines the reality of the coherence of the brain, and it's specifically the brain, because the brain is whoever said, God or I don't know what, but said, the universal consciousness said, we need a part of us that's really mostly water, even more than usual, so it can be almost infinitely flexible here. And so that's how I would say the mind creates the reality working through water. And that's been my quest, is not to keep this, and I'm not saying you are, but to keep this in a vague way, right? I want to bring it down, because therefore, if you're goofy in your thinking, like Alzheimer's or dementia, that's because you have a polluted water structure in your brain, and it could be polluted. It's interesting. I like Mark Twain, and he was in his late 80s. They asked him how come he had such a good memory, because he can remember anything. And you know what he said? I never tell a lie. Because he realized if you tell a lie, I always think like Bill Clinton, this guy's he can't but tell lies. And so you end up tangling up your water in your brain, and then you can't remember where your shoes are. If you think about it, so we have this 1.1 pound organ, right, with variable thickness, which even the thinnest part is opposite the exit, right? Now, we have these blood vessels which encircle would be 3 times the earth, right? Miles and miles of blood vessels with this viscous, sticky fluid and stuff floating in it that's approximately the same diameter as the blood vessels, right?
Yep.
Now, how that 1.1 pound organ could generate enough propulsion pressure to move that fluid all the way around. So we have this 1.1 pound organ, right, with variable thickness, which even the thickest part, the thinnest part is opposite the exit, right? Now, we have these blood vessels which encircle would be like 3 times the earth, right? Sort of, miles and miles of blood vessels with this viscous, sticky fluid and stuff floating in it that's approximately the same diameter as the blood vessels. Now, how that 1.1 pound organ could generate enough propulsion pressure to move that fluid all the way around. The heart is a pump, but it's the organ of love. And I say, on the way I talk, I say, that's because if you miss that the heart is not a pump, you don't see what happened in the heart. The heart stopped the blood, created a vortex. Anytime you do that with a magnetic substance, it creates an energy field around it. That is the sort of creative force of life. That's consciousness impact interfacing with substance
Absolutely right.
to create this thing we call a human being.
In other interviews where you've questioned this whole thing about what causes heart attacks and the blood being stopped and the arteries being clogged up, but this energetic connection between the vortex and the heart, there must be a connection surely to heart attacks when that breaks down.
That's why I go back to what is a person made of a brain. I start with what I know. If you actually do autopsies on people who died of heart attacks, the biggest study that was ever done, exactly 20% of the people who have a heart attack have any blockage at all in the artery leading to that part of the heart. That doesn't even mean that that the blockage caused those heart attacks. Let's just forget about that 20%. That means 80% of people with heart attacks who died, so those are the worst, have no evidence of plaque buildup in that artery. That's the biggest study ever been done on this. Published in a book on the etiopathogenesis of heart attacks, and you can find it on the heartattacknew.com website. A guy named Giorgio Baroldi. So then the question is, what happened to these people? And basically, they have a energy deficit. The same way that if you don't have energy in your leg muscle, you build up lactic acid and then you get cramps and pain. And then same thing happens in your spleen. If you have an energy deficit in your spleen, you go anaerobic, you build up lactic acid, you cause cramps and pain. And then, unlike the heart, the leg and the spleen stop, right? And then the lactic acid. The only two organs that have attacks are the brain and the heart. We call it a stroke and a heart attack because they use 80% of the energy. And by the way, the energy is not ATP. That's a common misconception amongst scientists and doctors of all stripes. The energy is water. Water creates an electromagnetic field because of its inherent tendency to separate charges. And the charge is the energy of life. And ATP is only function is to unfold the proteins that then structures the water. So if you have a energy deficit, then you build up lactic acid. The heart can't stop like the leg can. And then just like your leg, you feel cramps and pain. We call that angina. And then if it keeps going, it destroys the tissue, and we call that a heart attack.
What's the best way to have a healthy heart from that perspective?
The same way that people who never had heart attacks, which is lots of fats and don't eat poison food, it's the same. Don't poison yourself. Be out in the sun, work on your consciousness. A lot of the things that you've been saying, be in the sun, connect with the earth, do real work. 37% of Americans, there was a great book called Bullshit Jobs. If you ask them, should anybody do your job that you're doing? 37% of them say, no, this job shouldn't exist.